Hello everybody, and today we are giving recommendations for yellow books for my readathon, Gamenightathon. So, yellow is a little bit of the most difficult color for this whole readathon, I feel like, especially since I made that rule of, sorry, I'm just trying to get my mic cord a little bit in order, okay. Especially since since I made that rule that, like half of it or more than half of it needs to be yellow, because I definitely do have like quite a few colors, at least in my TBR, that quite a few covers where there's like yellow is a prominent color on it, but it's definitely not the majority color on it. So I have a huge pile here again of yellow books that are physically on my shelves that would potentially help you out throughout this readathon, but I'll also talk about a few that I have on my TBR because of the fact that yellow is such a difficult color. Now, prompts for yellow, a lot of them are actually like things that I cannot really give much recommendations for. There is the criminals prompt, then you have the 5-star prediction prompt, which I cannot make a 5-star prediction for you. You'll have to make one for yourself, but I'll definitely talk about a lot of books that I really love here, so that potentially can become 5-star predictions for you guys. You have the randomized prompt, for which I can give you no help whatsoever except for offering you a few yellow covered books. Then you have the disability prompt, and then you have what else do we have there? The non-fiction prompt and the new to you author. And the new to you author, of course, is another one of those. So I'm just going to go over books with yellow covers, and for the most part you guys are going to have to determine whether they would fit you or not. Of course, if it fits any of these other prompts that are more like objective, then I will talk to you guys about them as well. So a first one to recommend is a fantasy recommendation, and that is The Magician's Guild by Trudy Canavan. This is a fantasy trilogy, kind of bridging the gap between YA and adult. It is definitely adult, but it's definitely also something that YA readers could still appreciate. It is a little bit of a coming of age to some extent. We are following a young girl who is living in the slums, and every year there's a sort of like purge that the magicians do in the slums to kind of like clean up the town, let's say, and in a fit of rage she throws a rock at the magicians and it penetrates their shield, and so it turns out that she actually has magical powers herself, and she goes on the run because she does not want to be a part of the Magician's Guild. First one in a trilogy, and it's one that I read a whole long time ago, but I did recently reread it and I definitely felt like it still held up. Definitely one that is near and dear to my heart. So if you want to be reading a fantasy, this is one with a yellow cover. Another fantasy, more of a fantasy classic, which is also like kind of somewhat of a fairy tale fable, is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This is a classic, and it is near and dear to my heart because of the animated movie that was made out of this. I will admit that this writing style is less, for me it's a little bit too whimsical for my personal taste, but this is a story in which we're looking at a unicorn who one day overhears that she is the last unicorn, and so sets out into the world to figure out where all the unicorns have gone off to, and mayhem ensues. This is definitely somewhat more like cozy, whimsical, but there are definitely darker elements to this, and as a child I was absolutely afraid of the Red Bull. Next up, The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, I believe. This is a very weird Russian classic, so this is definitely for people who love their sort of like weird absurdist literature. There is not much explanation. The devil comes to Moscow and a lot of weird stuff happens. There's a talking cat. So in case the star prompt for talking animal appears, this one could work, but I will also definitely say that I know a lot of people who tried this book and hate it. It is really like for very particular tastes only. If you tend to enjoy the weird stuff with no explanation, then this might definitely work for you. It worked for me for that reason. One of my favorite books, but definitely another one of those like super, like not everybody's going to enjoy this one, is If on a Winter's Night a Traveler by Italo Calvino. So this is a book completely comprised of first chapters. It is therefore a very meta, breaking of the fourth wall type of book that definitely talks about the art of telling a story, and it definitely doesn't have cohesion to it. I really enjoyed the meta elements to it, and that is one of the reasons why I absolutely adored it the first time I read it. Would I still enjoy it as much if I reread it, like to the extent of calling it one of my favorite books of all time? times. Maybe not, but I think favorite books also kind of get born based off like the moment in which you read them. And so this is something that just exposed me to something new that really, really worked for me. Actually trying to figure out if these could have also worked for one of those other prompts that I talked about. And I think, yeah, the Master and Margarita like could work for like the criminals, I guess, because of the devil and because of a lot of the activities that take place in it. But aside from that, I don't think these work for any other prompts so far. Then we have A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. So this is a Afghanistani book. This is a book in translation, and it looks at the life of two women in Afghanistan, two women who are stuck in sort of like powerless situations, and the relationship that kind of builds between them. This is definitely also the type of like heart-wrenching book, especially towards the end of it. Another fantasy rec, She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. So this is a Chinese-inspired historical military fantasy, which we're looking at a young girl who, when she is young, she and her brother are taken to a fortune teller. The fortune teller predicts that her brother is going to have his name go down into history, whereas her fate is basically nothing. She has nothing to predict for her. And then not soon after, both her father and her brother are killed, and so she assumes her brother's name in order to steal his fate. Really enjoyed this one. It's also a sapphic book, which, I mean, June will be over by the time Gamenightathon comes around, but we can always continue reading sapphic and queer literature. So one of my favorites, gave that 5 stars. Next up, another sapphic one. The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, first book in the Burning Kingdoms series, in which we're looking at a queen who's or like a princess who's basically like exiled to this sort of like temple where she is basically like kept under control by her brother, who doesn't want her to get in his way basically, and then a sapphic relationship ensues with another mysterious woman who we find out more about throughout the book. First one is definitely a lot of like pining, lust, desire, and I feel like that is what I didn't enjoy about this one all that much. This one to me is sort of like middle of the road. I'm really not convinced about this book, but I do have the second one that I'm hopefully still gonna squeeze into June to figure out, because I do feel like there is a nice groundwork here. I love the world building in this one, but there's just not much done with it within this first book, because I feel like the plot is so stationary, and I hope that the second book, or the way that the second book is built up to, makes me hope that that is going to solve all of my issues with the book, and that then I will have the great world building with a plot that's much more to my liking. So that is my reservations about book 1. Which book with this one, this would also work for disability. Next up, we have a book that I will also count for disability. Is it a real disability? Maybe not, but it's definitely a disability within this story, and that is The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. This is absolutely a favorite of mine, 5-star read. This is a story in which we're looking at a professor who only has like 80 minutes of memory. So every minute, the 80th minute like gets erased and overwritten. So he only has memories that go 80 minutes into the past. And so he kind of keeps track of important information through notes that he like has stuck around on his clothing, for example. And so he gets a new housekeeper to take care of them, and they kind of bond together over a fascination for mathematics, which I'm sure does not really sound great, but is really great. I really enjoyed the mathematics within this book, and it's just like another heartwarming, cozy, slice of life Japanese book. And then the final book that I physically have here is another one that I really enjoyed. Another one that could also work for disability. That's Convenience Store Woman. I don't think it's said on the page, but this is supposed to be autism representation, and Sayaka Murata, I've heard through sources, is autistic herself. And this is a story about a woman who basically is working in a convenience store, is very happy with that life, with that job, but is constantly confronted with people who kind of feel that she should be going in different directions or that she should be wanting more out of life, whereas she is somebody who needs the stability of this job and the simplicity of this job to deal with the complexity of life and with like not understanding what people want from her or what appropriate behavior is. And so in this job she gets to just like understand that world and thrive within that world without having to compromise who she is as a person. Really enjoyed this one. Love say I can with that as Earthlings even more, but that was in my black book recommendation video. So these are all the ones that I like physically have here, but I am going to be giving you some other recommendations of books that are on my TBR. So they're recommendations, but I cannot tell you how good they are because I haven't read them myself. But for some of these prompts I don't have recommendations otherwise. So for the criminals prompt I have 2 recommendations to give. First off, we have Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. This is a book about a author who takes over the identity of her deceased friend who was an Asian woman, and then her book becomes like a bestseller and then takes over the Asian identity of her friends to kind of thrive off of her deceased friend's success. So yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense why that's criminals, right? And then the second recommendation I have is Butter. I don't remember the author here. This is a Japanese translated novel in which we are getting an interview with a woman, I believe, who is a condemned murderer, and yeah, more I don't remember, but I have been looking forward to this book for a while and I will very eagerly be reading it, hopefully maybe even in July, but definitely as soon as I reach 0 TBR, that might be one of the first books that gets added to my TBR. In terms of non-fiction, we have The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth, don't remember the last name. This is one that I did read. Personally, I don't necessarily think it was one of like the best non-fictions I've ever read. It's pretty dry, but I did want to give a recommendation because it is a climate change book looking at why this is now the sixth extinction. And so it is an important read, and so I did want to put it on people's radars in case they want to be reading it. Then there is a rental person who does nothing, I think the title is, which is a non-fiction memoir about this guy who one day like his boss told him like, yeah, you might as well not show up, you know, like whether you show up or not has like no impact on the work, and so he then decided to kind of offer himself up for hire to people to do nothing, which sounds like a very interesting concept to kind of figure out, okay, like what is it that people would hire somebody for if their intention is for them to do nothing. I do have some other books that I have gone through yesterday, and now of course I cannot think of a single other one of them. So I guess I will have maybe some still on the screen here for non-fiction that could potentially work out for you guys as well. But yeah, that is going to be my recommendations for yellow books. There are, as with the black books, there are of course many others out there, let's hope. So if you have another recommendation for a yellow book that would fit one of the prompts, definitely, or even just a yellow book that you really, really loved, which could become somebody else's 5-star prediction or new to them author, stuff like that, then definitely leave them down below in the comments as well. And so yeah, good luck for Gamenightathon, and yeah, see you guys for the next video. Bye!